Hi, welcome again to The Old Principal. I am the Old Principal, and we study a little English, and in this case, we even study a little bit about the 老校长自己本人的故事. Yeah, this story today comes from my own life. This is lesson number 154. Maple trees, 枫树, and walnuts, 硬壳果. This is a walnut. Does that look like a walnut? Yes, it looks like a walnut. Lesson number 154, maple trees and walnuts. And before we begin, let's listen to the story.
Number 154, Maple Trees and Walnuts. With fall, or autumn, began our return to school. We bought new clothes and met new friends and, of course, a new teacher. But before long, the excitement wore off, and the change in weather signaled a change in mood. The days got shorter and cooler and foggier. Tree leaves began to change color and fall off the trees. Red and yellow leaves were pretty, especially the maple trees around our school. Fortunately, I didn't have to rake up those acres of fallen leaves. We didn't have any maple trees around our house, only evergreen trees that keep their needles year-around. But we did have walnut trees, and they do lose their leaves. A huge walnut tree nearly filled our backyard. As the walnuts ripened and fell to the ground, we picked them up. Sometimes Dad climbed the tree and shook the branches vigorously. The shaking caused most of the walnuts to fall. Then we could easily pick them up. Since our tree was so large, we collected many buckets of nuts. In the process, our backs got sore and our hands became darkly stained. There are 3 steps to preparing the nuts so that they are ready to eat. First, we wash them in a bleach solution to remove the dark stains. Second, we put them out on large drying racks. And third, after many weeks of drying, we either boxed them up or began the monotonous task of shelling them. We carried out all 3 steps in the basement. Like all other trees whose leaves fall off, walnut trees lose their leaves annually. But unlike the maple trees, walnut leaves aren't very colorful. In fact, in the wet weather of fall, walnut leaves turn black, and the high acid content can hurt the grass lawn. So in the fall, my brother and I spent many hours raking up leaves.
Thank you, Mrs. Ash, for reading that to us. Now let's go on to the next, or at least the beginning of our story. With fall, fall is 秋季, right? Fall, autumn. Sometimes we say fall and autumn. They're very, they're the same thing. With fall or autumn began our return to school. Of course, 我们就开始上学. That's the good news. This is funny about school. When you're in school, you are so glad that school quits for the summer. 所以我也等得不耐烦可以上暑假. But after the summer, we all want to go back to school. So on our way to school, before we went there, we bought new clothes. And of course, at school, we meet new friends. Of course, new teacher. We almost always had a new teacher. Very seldom the teacher was the same. Okay, going on. But before long, the excitement wore off. Okay, the excitement, 兴奋，上学的兴奋 wore off, 渐渐没有了。To wear off, 渐渐就没有了。Okay, no more excitement. And the change in weather signaled a change in mood. Okay, the change in weather. Okay, the change in weather. 这个天气就变了, of course. It's now fall time. Signaled a change in mood. Signal, a signal is a 信号. Okay, we say a signal, or sometimes we say 记号. But in this case, it simply means it changed, signaled, 是带来 a change in mood. 我们的气氛，我们的心态or 心情changed. Yeah, because, you know, on good weather, 好天气, you're happy. Bad weather, not so happy, okay? Sometimes. Going on, the days got shorter and cooler. Okay. The days got shorter, of course, because we're getting close to winter. And guess what? They got cooler, 更加凉快. Okay? And foggier. Foggier. You know what fog is? F-O-G, fog is 雾. Okay? 更加有雾. Foggier. Tree leaves began to change their color. 特别是那个枫树啊. Tree leaves, 这个树上的叶子就开始变色. Not only were they changing, the colors were changing, but they started to fall off the trees. They started to fall off the trees. Going on. Red and yellow leaves were pretty, especially on the maple trees around our school. 特别是我们学校这个周围的这个枫树, the leaves were yellow and they were red. And I remember when they fell quite quickly. And sometimes there was a pile of leaves this thick. It was just 松松的, very soft. Going on. Fortunately, I didn't have to rake up those acres of fallen leaves. 幸亏我不用用耙子就耙这些 acres of fallen leaves. Now acres 是英亩. It's a certain amount of area, okay, of fallen leaves, 掉叶子. Fortunately, I didn't have to rake them up, and I was happy about that. In my house, we didn't have any maple trees around our house. So that was the good news. We didn't have any maple trees, only evergreen trees that keep their needles year-round. Evergreen trees, what is evergreen? Well, you should be able to figure that one out. They are always evergreen. So, they never change their color. They're always green, evergreen trees that keep their needles 保留 okay, their needles 针叶 you see, they're not a leaf like this. They're not a leaf, but they're just a needle 一个针叶子的叶 needles year round. So all year round they have these needles going on. But we did have walnut trees, and they do lose their leaves. In our house, in our backyard, 后面的院子, we did have we had 3 walnut trees. We had 3 of them, but we had one big walnut tree. What's a walnut tree? Okay, 核桃树. So we had one big walnut tree in our backyard. Okay, a huge walnut tree nearly filled the backyard. The complete backyard. Just one tree. It was a big tree. I don't know how to describe. It was just a very, very big tree. Of course, little boys like to climb trees, so it was fun to climb. Okay, as the walnuts ripened, 当这个核桃果 ripened 越来越熟的时候 and fell to the ground. Okay, we picked them up. 我们就捡起来. We just went down. We picked them up. Okay, that's what we did. And of course, in my home, my father, he was a businessman, so he had work to do. So we had to pick up the walnuts. Now, sometimes Dad climbed up into the tree and vigorously shook the tree. Okay, the branches, 这个树叶树枝 okay, 这个枝子 okay, what does that mean? Dad climbed up in the trees. He would grab the branch and he would shake the branch. What would happen? Okay, the shaking caused most of the walnuts to fall. The shaking, 这个摇动啊 okay, the shaking caused most of the walnuts, 大部分的这个 walnuts, to 掉在地上. Usually he did this on Sunday morning. Why on Sunday morning? Because on Sunday morning or Saturday morning we could work. But usually Sunday morning we could work. We could pick up the walnuts. Then we could easily pick them up because most of them, 大部分的大多数的已经掉在地上. So one time, 一次过 okay, we could pick up walnuts. Since our tree was so large, 因为是这么大的, we collected many buckets of walnuts. A bucket is a 水桶. So, and nuts, of course, 银壳果. Okay. In the process, our backs, oh, my aching back. Have you ever heard anybody say that? Oh, my aching back. Okay. So our backs got sore and our hands got stained. Okay, what does it mean to stain? To dye something is 染色. To stain is 染黑黑的. I don't know why, but this leaf of this tree, when it falls off the tree, it 会慢慢的变黑呀. It's ugly, and so our hands turned black. Okay, there are 3 steps to preparing the nuts so they're ready to eat. Okay, 3个步骤. So you got 3 steps. You cannot just eat the 银壳果, the walnuts right off of the tree. You cannot do that. So there are 3 steps. 步骤有3个步骤. Till they're ready 才能够准备好吃. So the first one is that we wash them in a bleach solution to remove the dark stains. Okay? So we took the walnuts. I still remember. We took the walnuts and we had this big sinks. Big. And we filled it with water. And then we put bleach, a bleach solution, 这个漂白水. I say solution, 液体, because a bleach solution in there, and we washed it. Walnuts float, 它们会漂流, 漂水, so they float. They don't sink. So we're washing. That's the good news is when that your hands get clean too. 你的手也会开始干净 because we're washing all of the dark stains off of the walnuts. We are making them light and whiter. Well, not white, but you know, it's not dark and black. That's ugly. It's 难看. Okay. 第二个步骤. Second, we put them out on large drying racks. A rack is a 架子. Drying is 烘干的. 烘干的, or we could just say 干燥的架子. You put this large out there. Our whole basement, we had a big basement. 我们的地下室是很大的. So we had all of these racks up there, and we put these walnuts on there, and we just let them dry. 让它们干燥. Okay, the third step after many weeks of drying, and that's true. It took many weeks because we didn't add any heat. It was always a little bit warm in the basement. 有一点点温暖, so we just let them dry. 一个星期过一个星期, 好几个星期, okay. Then what did we do? We boxed them up. That means that we put them in usually 纸箱子, okay, paper boxes, cardboard boxes. We put them in there, and then we began the monotonous task of shelling the peanuts. Okay, what does it mean, monotonous task? Monotonous. Interesting. Mono meaning one. Tone, 音调. Monotone, 一个音调. You see, a monotone. But a monotonous 加一个 OUS means 很无聊 很单调、很无聊的一件事情。Monotonous work, task, 工作 of 爆开这个印刻国。So you had to, what we usually do is we took a hammer and boom, and we break it up, and then we pull the pieces out. Okay, we carried out all three of these steps in the basement. So 这个三个步骤都是在这个basement 里面。We did this all down in the basement. Going on. Like other trees whose leaves fall off, walnut trees lose their leaves annually. Okay? Yes, like other trees whose leaves fall off, walnut trees lose their leaves annually. Okay? So, they lose their leaves. They fall off. And it leaves 满地，就是一片leaves, 这个掉的叶子。But unlike maple trees, walnut trees aren't very colorful. 不像这个 maple trees, walnut trees, I already told you, they are black. They are very black. Going on. In fact, the wet weather of fall, walnut trees turn black, and the high acid content can hurt the grass and the lawn. 这个酸性是很高啊。Because the 酸性是很高啊。So, as I remember, our grass under that tree was not very good. 会影响，会害这个草地。If you picked up the leaves, right, 你马上这个爬起来还好。Okay? So, in the fall, my brother and I spent many hours, what? In the fall, my brother and I spent many hours raking up leaves. Okay? Many hours raking up leaves. Now, having said that, do you like to eat walnuts? In the Chinese, we spend a little bit of extra time here now. The Chinese culture likes walnuts. Why do they like it? It looks like the brain. The walnut looks like the brain. So they say, oh, walnuts are good for your brain. 会帮助你的思想，因为是有一点像一个头脑一样啊，人的头脑。Well, I don't know about that, but I like walnuts. One thing, and in northern China, they have very nice walnuts. We enjoyed the walnuts. But as we go back and think about what we did as young people, we hated the fall because it meant that we had to work. To review what we had said, we had to rake up the leaves, and it was always cold. I remember my hands were always cold, so we had to rake up the leaves. But before we rake them up, 还没有把这个用耙子，把这个叶子这个收起来丢掉，还没有到这个地步。The first thing we had to do is we had to bend our backs and bend down there. And oh my, this feels so sore. And children always complain about sore backs. I don't know why. Maybe we're not used to it. Now, of course, sometimes I actually got down on my knees, but my mother was not happy. Why was my mother not happy? Because when I got down on my knees, my pants became black. Especially 膝盖那个地方啊。My pants became black, so my mother did not like for us to wear good clothes, 特别是我们裤子。So, many memories of shelling the walnuts, of picking up the leaves, shaking the tree. My father had to shake the tree, not me. I was too 太轻了。我爸爸比较重了，他可以 shake the tree. Pleasant memories of the fall, 秋季的好的思想. I still think happy thoughts about them. Email address. You can write to us, theoldprinciple@gmail.com. Or you can write or watch our programs on our website. 可以看我们的节目在我们的网站 www.theoldprinciple.org. Hey, had a great time with you this time. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Have a great few days studying English. Bye-bye for now.